Hello there, and many thanks for joining us on this edition of the program, People, Politics, and Power. I am Imoni Amarere, and today we're focusing on another aspect of the one-year anniversary of the Tinubu administration. Now, you will recall that on Wednesday, May 29, Nigeria celebrated 25 years of its unbroken practice of democracy. It also marked the one-year anniversary of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. For many Nigerians, the past 1 year has been a mixed bag of fortunes, the good, the bad, and the ugly in several aspects, especially in the economic, security, and social sectors. In the past year, the human rights and rule of law performance of the Tinubu administration has been widely criticized by various rights organizations. Observers of Nigeria's governance system tend to align with this criticism as they point at some noticeable infractions on the observance of human rights and the rule of law. Reports have highlighted incidents of arbitrary arrests, police brutality and harassment, extrajudicial killings, restriction of freedom of expression, gender-based violence, lack of access to justice, not to talk of incessant kidnappings for ransom, ritual killings, as well as one-chance menace in the urban centers. Amnesty International, in a recent report, said human rights observance and the rule of law records fell below expectations in the last 1 year. It described as severe human rights violations with impunity across the country and questions the government's commitment to the protection of citizens and ensuring justice and accountability for a broad pattern of systemic human rights abuses. On the program today, we shall review the human rights and rule of law observance records under the current administration in the last 1 year, against a backdrop of the several reported cases of violations and, of course, denials by the different government institutions and authorities so mentioned. I'll be joined on the program first by Babatunde Oluwajo, who is joining us virtually from Lagos. Babatunde Oluwajo is a rights activist and he is a development expert. Babatunde, thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me, and thank you, AIT.
Great.
Good to be with you again.
And we'll be joined very shortly by Hilary Ogbonna. Hilary Ogbonna is a lawyer and he is the special advisor to the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria. He'll be joining us in a while. All right, we'll go into our discussion in a moment. That will be right after this timeout. Stay with us.
Our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, Babatunde, thank you so much for your time. Let's begin this way. What would be your assessment of the protection of human rights in Nigeria and the observance of the rule of law in the last 1 year?
Well, once again, thank you very much for having me. I would say what we have had is a mismatch of, in terms of performance of the government. We expected so much more, given the promises that was made by this government before they got to power. But what we have seen is a rash of abuses. We expected that by now the government would have taken certain steps to help improve our human rights record. If you start with the attacks on journalists, I want to say it's probably one of the worst since 1999. We have had journalists being kidnapped right in the front of their families and taken to unknown destinations with nobody explaining why. Just because they did some expose on some corrupt practices by people high up in government. Just this morning, we have had another set of journalists again who have been arrested for no reasons. And then if you look at all over, look at the eastern part of Nigeria, it's becoming almost what I would call, it's almost a war zone, and then people hiding under different guises to not to respect the basic rights of the citizens. Because when you are faced with the type of crisis we have all over, what you need to do, just to quote, they use their word, is not just kinetic solutions. You equally need to use non-kinetic solutions. So because of the fixation with kinetic solution, in places like the East, there are so many human rights abuses and violations that are going on. And then people too using public offices to commit heinous human rights violations. I would say that this government has not done well in terms of protection of basic human rights. They have not done too well in terms of even protection of lives and properties. And if you remember, the Constitution is so clear that the primary duty of government is the protection of lives and property, the welfare of the citizens is the one of probably the number one function of government as enshrined in the 1999 Constitution as amended. So I think in terms of human rights, this government have not done very well.
Yeah, but Babatunde, when people talk about protection of human rights in Nigeria, the tendency always is to think that human rights are violated only by government agencies or government agents, either the police, the military, the DSS or whatever. But I believe that the violations that are going on in Nigeria today are far beyond what is perpetrated or what is done by these government agencies and agents. We also have situations where rights are being violated by non-state actors and even by individuals.
I agree with you, but there's a nexus between the lack of respect for basic rights by government institutions and the impunity of individuals. Right now, if you go to a police station because someone assaults you, the first point is to first bring money for the paper for you to write your complaint. And then if that person has to be arrested, the police will ask you, will tell you that they don't have fuel. So it's either you buy fuel or you provide some means of transport to the point where where they need to effect an arrest. So there's a nexus. Because they don't even see it as a fundamental responsibility to protect your own rights. So when an individual now, infringes on your fundamental rights, it is not a priority for them. If you cannot pay, forget about it. Nobody will help you to protect your rights. Why the human rights community, the CSO community, the NGOs, the CBOs are trying to fill that gap. But the question is, how much can they do given their limited resources and means? So there's a nexus because the state itself does not protect rights. It has created a culture of impunity, and then the individuals now right on that to perpetrate human rights abuses. And then if you say you want to now seek protection from the law, if you don't have the resources, you are on your own. Nobody will lift a finger to protect that right that has been infringed. If you are lucky, you may get one or two NGOs to come to your aid, but how much can the NGOs do, given their limited means? So there is a direct nexus. The lack of respect by state agencies, state institutions for rights has created a culture of impunity, and other people, other individuals are riding on that culture of impunity to infringe on people's rights.
Now let's extend that a little bit, Babatunde, and to look at the role that civil society organizations, human rights organizations, have played in the last 1 year. We are trying to restrict ourselves to this last 1 year because there are also criticisms and complaints that there are some long-standing rights abuses that have been there that this administration ought to have inquired into and should have addressed, or at least attempted to address in the last 1 year, that have not, in fact, been addressed at all. But let's look at what the civil society groups, the human rights groups, the human rights lawyers in this country have done within the last 1 year. Have they been able to clearly highlight the perceived or the said violations of human rights? Have they done enough to bring them to the fore? Have they done enough to bring them before the judiciary to address them?
I would say we need to give kudos to the human rights community, the NGO community, the community-based organization sector. They have done massively. If you remove them from the equation, we will not be where we are. Things would have been far worse than they are right now. And we are talking about organizations with very limited means. Organizations with very, very limited means, but who, despite those limited means, still make effort to expose, to challenge, to promote, to advocate for protection of basic human rights. I think the NGO community, we need to give them, we need to give them a pat on the back. We must say kudos to them. And that is why, again, we need to now able to a challenge to Nigerians who have means, who are public spirited, to see how we can support these organizations. Because many of them, they rely on, on support from international development partners. And the international development partners equally got those support from their taxpayers, from people who are public spirited, people who have that spirit of philanthropy. What we need to do is to build a base, local base for philanthropy, for support for such causes as human rights causes in Nigeria. I think the NGOs in Nigeria, they have done fantastically well. They have challenged abuses. They have advocated for protection of rights. And they have even gone, not just Nigerian courts, the ECOWAS courts. We have seen a number of them gone that far to challenge some of the abuses that has been perpetrated by government and government agencies and officials of government. So I think they have done well.
Okay, for several years, even with past administrations, there have been complaints about long-standing rights abuses, such as extrajudicial killings, torture, enforced disappearances. We have arbitrary arrests and harassment of individual Nigerians, particularly so the media practitioners in the country. We also have had violent clashes in various communities across the country. And of course, the counter-insurgency operations that have been carried on in particularly in the northeast and some part of the northwest. There have been complaints about high-handedness on the part of security agencies. These are all long-standing rights abuses. In the last 1 year, how much of these ones that I've enumerated have we had complaints or about?
I think it has become rampant and has not subsided in any form, way or manner. We saw what happened in Banex. We saw what happened in the Delta State. And we have seen what is happening continuously, even in the Southeast and other parts of the country. Well, of course, I must say that we understand that our military men, our servicemen are making a lot of sacrifices. And in many cases, they are under a lot of pressure. But at the same time, there should be rules of engagement. And those rules of engagement should recognize the basic rights of the ordinary citizens. Where people commit crime, we are not saying you should treat them with kid gloves. But we're saying we're trying to enforce the law enforce law and order, you should at the same time, take cognizance of the fact that they are innocent people. We should reduce our collateral damages to the lowest minimum possible. There will always be collateral damages in one way or the other, but we should reduce it. Like, to say, in legal practice, and I want to paraphrase one of our most respected judges. He said it is better. It is better to allow 100 criminals, 100 criminals to go free than to imprison one innocent person. So we need to apply that principle. That yes, we need to deal with criminality. We can't, because right now we're just like, I just can't describe the stage we are. That's rampant criminality. We need to rein it in. But while doing that, we need to equally understand that we need to respect basic rights of the citizens of Nigeria. So in terms of high-handedness, I don't think it has stopped. And more often than not, those who actually bear the brunt are the innocent people. The criminals commit their crime and they disappear. And then police, soldier, everybody comes to that community. And people who know nothing about the criminality are made to pay the price for the crimes of a few. So I think the rules of engagement should be very clear in terms of respecting the basic rights. And then we need more of intelligence, led operations. We need more of intelligence-led operations and less of this kinetic enforcement of law and order. If all over the world, that's the current practice. It's about gathering intelligence and then deciding the right course of action, deciding who to target, deciding who to be brought to book. Not about a year or about ago, some years back. An American citizen was kidnapped between Nigeria and I think Niger. What did the American army do? They gathered enough intelligence. They zeroed down where the kidnappee was, and then they moved in. They neutralized the kidnappers, and they were able to extract the American citizen. That is what you call intelligence-led operations. And I think that's what our security agencies should invest more on, send their men more on it, build the infrastructure necessary to gather intelligence so that when you move in, you only target those who are responsible for criminalities and you don't make innocent people bear the brunt. And in the process, you not only disregard their rights as citizens, but you infringe on it with impunity. And I think that's the way for us to go.
Let's look at the nexus between insecurity, which is, as you say, becoming very prevalent in several parts of the country today, in the northwest, in the northeast, in the north central, in the southeast, even in the southwest and other parts of the country. Let's look at the nexus between the situation of insecurity and the violations of rights, of human rights, fundamental rights of people across the country.
I think there's a direct nexus. Because if you the story of the leader of Boko Haram, the late Boko Haram leader, the founder, one of the reasons why Boko Haram gained traction was the way and manner. I think Yusuf or something was his name. The way and manner he was murdered in cold blood. The video was circulating even at a point on social media. Because you arrested him, yes, he may have committed a crime, but there are processes, there are due process that you expect that, people should follow. And if he's found guilty, he should serve his punishment, whatever the punishment may be. But he was murdered in cold blood. And it was at that point that the violent turn in Boko Haram really became something serious. And this is how in other places too, violations of basic rights have pushed people into embracing criminality in order to protect themselves, because people don't have faith that if they go through the process, the due process of seeking protection for their rights that have been violated, that they will get justice. So people therefore resort to self-help. And that is why that culture of impunity has become so rampant in our nation. So we just need to understand that there's a direct nexus between violation of human rights and the resort to self-help. And one of the manifestations of resort to self-help is insurgency, kidnapping, and other violent crimes that is rampant all over the country. If as a farmer, somebody, brings a head of cow to eat my investments, and I know if I go to police and go to court, I'll get justice, why would I resort to self-help? Why would I resort to poisoning my crops so that when they come again, all the cows will die? But because people know that they will not get justice, that's why they will resort to self-help. And now the cattle owners will come for retaliation. The farmers will regroup, retaliate again. And before you know, you have this circle, this viral circle of violence. So there's a direct nexus, there's a direct link between violations of rights, the inability of the state to protect basic rights, the propensity of the state to even violate those rights, and violent crimes and criminality.
What, in your view, therefore, has been responsible for the inability of the state, as you put it, to protect the rights of ordinary Nigerians in this last 1 year of the Tinubu administration?
Well, it goes beyond the 1 year anyway, but we expected more from the Tinubu administration, given the fact that from 1999 they have been in the forefront, or rather they have been active in demanding for the rejigging of the nation, such that we can have state agencies becoming more responsible, and more accountable. So that was the basis on which we are analyzing them now, on the basis on which we are putting them under the microscope. These are people who know all the right things. They have been part of all the campaign for the right things to be done so that state institutions can work. But here we are. They are in power right now. And what are we seeing? No any form of improvement whatsoever. First, our state institutions have been compromised. Especially institutions that have a mandate to protect basic rights. Because they themselves are the #1 violators of human rights. So what do you therefore, how can you therefore expect them to now protect rights that what they do on a daily basis to violate? We need to rejig. We need to fix our institutions. The police, despite even AJA, the Administration of Justice Act, that we expect that would have changed a lot of things. What has happened? Go to police stations. You find people being kept beyond the legal period they ought to be kept. They're just being kept there. Nobody's charging them to court. Go to our prisons. You have more awaiting trial inmates than even those who have been convicted. So we need to do something about our administration of justice system. We need to do something about the compromises that has happened to those institutions. Just this morning, I was reading about how military men and some, civil defense men were busted operating an armed robbery ring. Some of them have been involved in kidnapping. All these are manifestations of the compromise of those critical institutions that are supposed to protect rights, supposed to protect us, supposed to secure us, supposed to safeguard us. So I would say we need to rejig those institutions. Number two, we must make the Administration of Justice Act work such that state institutions, police, army, civil defense, they will understand that they have a duty to protect rights. That even when people are arrested for crimes, they still have certain basic rights within under the law, and they will respect it. And those who are found guilty, they will go through due process and make sure that they pay for whatever crimes they have committed. But most importantly, that innocent people are not, that their rights are not infringed upon. Those are the critical elements that I think can help protect the rights and safeguard the liberties of Nigerians.
When you say that our state institutions are not working, when you say that the government has not been able to fix those state institutions the way they were advocating for them to be fixed when they were outside of government. When you say that something needs to be done about these state institutions, what are those specific things that you expect government that is populated or peopled by persons who were very strong advocates for the fixing of these institutions when they were outside government? What are those specific things that you think must be done?
Okay, well, one is even the appointment of those who manage those institutions. We need to democratize it. In other parts of the world, let me use the US as an example. Even public prosecutors are elected. The public has a say in how they get into those offices. Judges, in many cases too, are elected. People have a say in how they emerge. But here we are. All I just need to do, look around as a president, as a governor, is to push either my relative, my townsman, my whatever, even if the man has no any form of credibility, even if he has criminal record in the past.
Well, we appear to have lost signals with Babatunde Oluwajo there. We hope that he will be able to rejoin us in a while. But in the meantime, let's go on a short break and hope that Babatunde is able to rejoin in a short while.
When the issues are critical, germane to Nigeria's democratic process,
politicians can only be seen maybe on television by judges. They should not intermingle, because once you intermingle, then you destroy the systems.
when the personalities are big, important to national discourse.
When you reach certain stage in power and you demonstrate arrogance to the extreme, there's no other thing that will happen to you other than to fall.
When the developments are seemingly complex, confounding like a 1,000-piece jigsaw, that's when we require bold, sound, and analytical minds to help put the pieces together. Jigsaw with Benga Arileba, now showing Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. on AIT. Jigsaw, demystifying the issues.
All right, we have Babatunde Oluwajo back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Babatunde, we apologize. There was a break in the network there. But you were talking about how to fix the state institutions that are required to protect rights and ensure the observance of the rule of law.
Yeah, thank you. I was making the point about the fact that there's need to be the involvement of the public in the appointment of critical actors who are involved in those institutions to manage human rights and protect human rights. And I was giving the example of the US, that in the US, certain prosecutors, the public is involved in the process of appointing prosecutors, of determining who becomes a prosecutor, determining who even becomes a judge in certain cases. So this, and what that does is that it gives room for people to understand the fact that they need to be accountable in this office that they are. But if I know that all I need to do is to have political connections before I get into an office, before I become an IG, before I become a public prosecutor, before I become those who are actors, before I become a judge, I won't be accountable. So the involvement of the public in the emergence of those who lead those institutions at different levels is important for us to have accountability, and then for us to ensure that they will perform the duties of the office, which is to protect rights, to ensure that they don't infringe on rights, and to ensure that those who does, either state or non-state actors, can be brought to account. That is number one. Number two is that we must take ourselves serious. What do I mean? If you look at the Auditor General's report on most of our public institutions, including those who have a duty to protect rights, it is what you call slaves. So those who claim they represent us, equally have a duty to help us hold those institutions accountable by ensuring that those who in the past have committed crimes, especially crimes of infringement on human rights, don't become heads of those institutions. Like I was using the case of the Apo 6. One of the critical actors in that killing, murder, daylight murder, those who become, is it an AIG? Is that accountability? Where's deterrence? Why will others behind him not do worse, not commit worse human rights violations? When they saw a superior who was involved in daylight murder, only to be released and then be close to the post of an AIG or whatever, one of the highest officers within the police ranks. So, people who can just not be appointing people. If you have been involved in egregious human rights violations, you cannot be left within the ranks, talk less of becoming a major leader of any of those institutions that have a duty to protect us in terms of human rights, a duty to ensure that those who violate rights are brought to book. You don't have the duty. So if we start with just these two, we'll make a lot of mileage. Number 3, the culture of impunity, which is tied to the fact that people who are not qualified, who have been involved in prior human rights violations, are now being made heads or being promoted, is that we must address the culture of impunity. If you do the crime, you should do the time in terms of human rights violations. As a police, if you misuse your power, you should be answerable. As an army, air force, soldier, whatever, if you abuse the powers, that powers have been entrusted unto you. If you misuse it and abuse it, you should be accountable, you should be held accountable. How would do this? So there's a culture of accountability. These institutions will become reformed.
All right, Tunde, does it make a big difference at all that politically we are operating a presidential system of government that is borrowed largely from the United States presidential system of government, where, of course, you talked about having to elect people into offices at different levels, including in the judicial arm of government and all other and many other arms of government. And the fact that in Nigeria we appear to be operating a mixed system, that is the U.S. Presidential political system, but in the judiciary and in the police service or in the military service, we are essentially operating what we inherited from the British system of government at independence.
Well, I think what happens is that when it suits those who get into public office in Nigeria, they choose which one they want to go for. We are a federation. But when it suits them, they will behave like they are operating a unitary system of government. When it suits them, at times, they even behave like they operate a parliamentary system, even when we operate a presidential system. So it is about their interests, and that is why as citizens, we owe ourselves a duty to get organized. We owe ourselves a duty to support those institutions, voluntary organizations who keep challenging the government at any point in time when they overreach themselves, when they take decisions that favors them rather than the citizens. We need, because as it is said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. At any point in time that we go to bed and we don't, as citizens, stand up to challenge, to contest, to question, to demand accountability and misuse of public power, then we're in danger. We're in danger. As far as those who are in government, if they know there's no fear that people will question them, they will do anything. Here today I get into government and I have no fear that people will demand accountability from me. The chances are that I'm equally misbehaved. The citizens are the #1 agents of accountability. They're the #1 people that can make people accountable. That the number one people who can make people sit up, that this, if we do this, these people will give me no peace. And that is the duty that we have as a collective, as citizens. The office of the citizenry is the number one office in the land. And we should exercise our powers to ask questions from those that we have entrusted, public offices to. If we don't do that, my brother, they will continue to push. They will continue to push. So as they are pushing, which we need to be pushing back to say, no, we know the limit of the powers we have given you. And at this point, you think you're overreaching yourself and you're abusing those powers. Except we do that. I don't know where these guys will lead us to.
A related issue, Babatunde, is the fact that Nigeria today faces very critical or severe economic challenges, which has plunged many families into hardship in terms of the provision of all basic necessities of life, food, health, education, and all of that for families. Is that having any impact on the observance of the human rights and what you describe as the eternal vigilance of citizens to want to put the feet of duty bearers to the fire all the time?
There's a direct relationship between economic misery and the lack of respect for basic rights. You know, the Constitution, the crafters of the Constitution were not mistaken when they said the primary purpose of government is security and welfare of the citizens. But by the time you have a government whose number one duty is to kowtow to IMF World Bank, then that country is finished. IMF World Bank is not they are not agents of development, they are agents of underdevelopment. And I want to state it categorically, and I've said this before in public media, that I challenge anybody to tell me one single country that on the basis of IMF World Bank conditionalities and advice has moved from state of underdevelopment to development. We knew what happened with them in the 80s when they came with the structural adjustment program, and now they impoverished almost all the African countries except those who refuse to take their poison chalice. So when you have a government whose primary duty is to do what IMF says, there's no way the citizens will not be imperiled. And when people are under economic stress, the idea of rights is not even the first thing they think about. Like they say in the popular parlance, a hungry man does not listen to preaching. Person hungry, they cash, not they listen to prison. To preaching, sorry. And that is the challenge we have right now. We have a government whose number one duty right now is to please IMF, World Bank, and imperialists and agents of imperialism. Otherwise, how do you explain a person who is coming to power? You have not even gotten to the office to know the realities. You have announced no more fuel subsidy. Before we can say Jack Robinson, you have thrown our currency to the dogs. Does US, the UK, or the European Union throw their currencies to the dogs? They preach free market, but they are the number one protectionists in the world. UK, US, the EU. Is it for nothing that they keep fighting China on a daily basis? And then they keep putting restrictions. And these are the same people who say free markets. There's a margin that the American currency, the UK pounds, the European euro can never fall below. There's a margin it can never fall below. Forget the pretense about free market. If it does, there'll be massive state intervention to show up the dollar. Because, the dollar, the pounds, or the euro. They know the implication of a free-falling currency. But here we are. We have agents of imperialism. And I think Nigerians should understand that when you say agent, CIA agent, MI4, MI5 agent, you think there are some people in black suits who are just crawling around in dark alleys. No. From 1999 to now, look at all those who IMF World Bank are sent to us. They have seconded to our government. After they do their job, those who do it very well, what happens to them? They get choked. They get juicy appointments. They have delivered on their mandates. In the past, who is IMF World Bank to even bring somebody direct to give him a minister? But it started under Obasanjo. They were admitting people directly. All the people who are tying gate, those who are wearing suits, all agents of imperialism, agents of IMF World Bank. And they tell us what they cannot do. In their countries, up to today in the UK, there's a cap on the electricity bill. No matter what you use, there's a maximum you cannot go beyond a particular amount. No matter the size of your family. The same people tell us now, remove, what is it called? These phantom subsidies they go about for electricity. The petrol, which is probably the only thing Nigerians enjoy. It's at any price you like.
All right, Babatunde, we have been joined now by Hilary Ogbonna. I did tell you earlier that he was going to join us. Hilary is a lawyer, and he is the special advisor to the executive secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Thank you for finding time to join us, Hilary.
Thank you so much for having me, Imoni.
Yes,
and,
we are
thank
looking.
You, our very good friend,
Babatunde
Oluwajo.
He has held the fort for you while you were on your way getting
Babatunde
here.
always doesn't disappoint. Thank you.
Right, so we are taking a look at the human rights situation in the last 1 year in Nigeria and the observance of the rule of law. Yes. From your own perspective as a lawyer and one who is also in the National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria, what is your assessment?
I think our assessment, my personal assessment would move from the responsibility of government and then the responsibility of individuals and the responsibility of the National Human Rights Commission, because you are trying to evaluate human rights. So you are also evaluating the National Human Rights Commission. And in terms of government, and this is my advice to everyone, we should always remember that Nigeria has a 3-tier level government. So the federal government, the state government, and then the local government. We need to begin to ask a lot of questions on what each of these governments need to do to realize human rights. But direct to your question, how has it been over the last 1 year? The last 1 year has seen Nigeria and Nigerians moving from one level of security challenge to the other. And then, of course, the impact of the economic reform on human rights can never be overemphasized. And I think that is the point that Tunde was making in his own way. But in my own way, as someone who is also in a little bit of circumstances associated with both the government and development partners working in this country, I would say that the economic reforms were not initially thought to integrate human rights into them. Because if you are doing reforms on the economy, there are both the immediate and remote implications, okay, on the lives of citizens, especially a country which a year before the implementation of the economic reforms, we said that 122 million are living in multidimensional poverty. So that is the base upon which the current economic reform is being implemented. That's the foundation. So if this is our base upon which we are implementing these reforms, we need to now, first and foremost, have side-by-side interventions that would not only secure security, but also human rights, direct welfare of the people, as Section 14 has mandated every level of government in Nigeria. So we need a human rights-based approach to economic reforms. And that human rights-based approach would look at, first of all, you cannot be reforming in the midst of insecurity. So there are Nigerians today that once you take care of insecurity, they just want their lives to be secured. They are not asking for CNG buses. They are not asking for the monthly social investment fund. They just want to be alive day to day. And those Nigerians, we know where they are. They are in Katsina, they are in Zamfara, they are in Kebbi, they are in Plateau. Okay? So they are in Kaduna. How do we ensure that these people, they are not even enjoying government programs ab initio? So can we ensure that at least they live day by day alive? They are able to go to the farms. They are able to live their socio-cultural lives. You know, all of these things have human rights implications. And I dare say that security is the number one, because half of Nigeria requires that. And you see today, even the military acknowledges that they are deployed practically everywhere. So that's the best way you can even begin to rate human rights in Nigeria. The fact that these men and women who are supposed to protect our sovereign integrity, who are supposed to defend Nigeria, are rather deployed across Nigeria fighting citizens of the same Nigeria because of insecurity. So that is one level, one way to see it, and I must say that government is doing a lot on this, but Nigeria is a big country. That a lot is like a drop in the ocean. Then you asked me about the rule of law. Unfortunately, you are asking me this question at a very wrong time, when we are seeing both our judicial system being regaled by inconsistent rulings by courts of law, citizens losing faith in the judicial system. You know, so this is not, you may not be saying that it is the president of Nigeria or the governor of a state. No, it is the judiciary, an independent arm of the government. A judge decides what a judge ought to do, okay, without interference. No judge has ever been jailed for a bad judgment or for a judgment that seems to be partial. That is to show you the discretion, as we say it in court. The discretion of a judge is so wide. And that's why when lawyers split to judges, they say, please exercise this discretion judicially and judiciously. So what is happening to the judiciary today is a testament of the fact that human rights is still very far away and rule of law. Another example associated with the judiciary is the way human rights cases are treated. Okay? We have in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, it is the only part of the Constitution that says how citizens can go to court in case their human right is about, or has been violated. Now, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, in his wisdom, had made the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedure rules to guide how citizens will go to that court. But today you see that in most courts in Nigeria, political cases are given priority more than the human rights cases. And then some of these human rights cases, you pay a lot in filing fees. Why can't it be free or even a token? You know, so these are some
access itself is restricted.
Is restricted. So, and then not to talk of the number of years a woman would need to go to court in case of SGBV or in a case of an inheritance right, or the average person who takes police to court. You know, I was the secretary of a SARS panel where we had, out of the 297 cases, we had 55 cases that were brought to us by citizens of Nigeria who claimed that after 10 years or 7 years of going to court and succeeding against the police, they've not been paid the fruit of their judgment. So you are looking also on the issue of judgment debt. So litigation is a process. It doesn't end with the judgment. It ends with when citizens now receive the fruit of the judgment. So we have in Abuja SARS panel alone about 850 million naira in 55 cases from those cases that the government has refused to pay. Then last but not the least is the one that will interest you, Imoni. Press freedom has become, I don't know if today addressed that, but also we are beginning to see a pattern of the shutting of the press space. Okay, we are beginning to see before it was the larger civic space where NGOs are not free to operate, NGOs are not able to satisfy their mandate. Now we are beginning to see the only institution that was mentioned in Chapter 2, the press, Section 22. So we've seen over the last 1 month or so, media personalities being, some people use the word abducted, but I would not use that word. I think this is just some overzealous police people acting on their own accord. Most times they tell you it is on the accord of the IGP. It will be difficult for me to believe that the IGP will be so concerned about how to arrest an editor of an online piece. I would not want to believe that. But if it is also something that the IGP needs to look into. You know, police now interpret the law. You see a lot of police PROs, they come on Twitter, they come on air, and they say, yes, that person is guilty of cyber stalking. That person is guilty of cyber, whatever they want to say, including the laws that have been amended. Okay, so these are some of the human rights challenges we continue to see day to day. And as a commission, we are really concerned that we are beginning to see the days of the military where there were press, clamp down on press freedom. If a journalist has been seen to commit certain infraction, you arrest the journalist, you invite the journalist. It's not only governors that should be invited. You invite the journalist. If the journalist refuses to come, you declare him wanted. And when perchance you arrest that journalist, there is the 48-hour limit.
And charge him to court.
Yes, and charge him to court. If he's not charged to court, please avail him of his bail right. Keeping a journalist or a Nigerian citizen, for that matter, 10 days in detention for whatever reason.
Without charges.
Is now, you are taking it to becoming terrorism.
All right, Hilary, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We must go for the next program to take over. Hilary Ugbona is a lawyer and special advisor to the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria. Thank you so much for finding time, in spite of your very tight schedule, to spend some time here with us. And of course, Babatunde Oluwajo joined us from Lagos. Babatunde, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for holding the fort so admirably while Hilary was trying to make his way to the studio. Thank you very much. All right?
Thank you, Tunde. Thank you, Tunde.
All right, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for investing your time with us. Join us again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.